Hello, everybody. This is Thersites the Historian. I'm doing a follow-up call with Danny Chick. Recently, we had a video where we talked about our 2020 election predictions, and Danny would like to change his pick and go through his reasons for thinking that Trump will actually win in 2020. So, Danny, what's sort of your baseline for analyzing how the election will go? What's your sort of theory of how or what wins elections? Let's put it that way.
Well, first off, man, thanks for having me back. I really appreciate it. I just want to say, last time we did our video and we kind of got to that part of the video, I got to say, I don't feel like I was really prepared for it. Like, in a little bit of reflection, I thought, I'm really accepting a lot of narratives here that are telling me one thing I should be thinking rather than really looking into it for myself, which is not common for me. Normally, I'd try to be a little bit iconoclastic on these things, but, not that time. So originally when we picked, I, of course, went with you and Sean, and I said, I think Harris and Biden are going to win, although I still stand by there's no path to landslide here. In 2016, I called it for Donald Trump. And one of the reasons I called it for Donald Trump is because, I did some trips and some vacationing around rural America. And, I kind of realized, well, this guy has a ton of appeal. And there are people who are going to like him. And we can't ever underestimate the fuck you vote. And so, I was like, no, I think this guy is going to pull this thing out, and I think people really, really hate Hillary Clinton that much. I mean, it's very hard to get a candidate elected who a good, solid portion of America thinks she belongs in prison. So, I tend not to follow polling too much because I see polling as something that can be easily manipulated, and also a lot of polling comes from tech companies, and I think tech companies are like the devil. So I have a tendency to think to myself, well, look, I mean, especially if it's scientific polling, I just don't trust it, and I don't know how many times these polls can be wrong when people still keep wanting to cite them all the time. And I think the reason they cite them is because it's saying things that they want to hear. So the way I kind of look at a lot of these elections is I like to actually look at local news. And I know that seems, I don't know, there are other people who might do that, or that seems maybe counterintuitive, but I have a tendency to say, what's going on in Florida? Like, how is the local party doing things there? Like, how are things looking down ballot? What's the overall mood of the country? And so, I feel like when I made that prediction, I was paying way too much attention to polling that I usually don't put much stock in. So another thing, too, I read through the comments section on that video, and somebody said that when we got to that part of the video, it was kind of just like a circle jerk. And I was like, yeah, you know what? That person might have been right. I probably should have pushed back on you guys a little bit more. So I'd like to come back and think that Donald Trump is winning. And I sat down in front of an electoral map, and I started to kind of like map out his path to victory. And I think he's going to win this election by a very slim margin. So, like I said, I think that's usually how I look at things, is I tend to look at the bigger picture and think about the mood of the country. And but in this particular case, I think one of the most important factors, and one I'm probably going to bring up a lot during this video, is going to be how much political unrest did this place see. So for instance, like a place like Wisconsin, right?
Right.
I think Wisconsin is starting to lean more towards Donald Trump. And I even started to think that even before the events in Kenosha happened. So in pretty much every projection that I have, I've got Wisconsin sitting at a pretty comfortable red at this point.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and make your map here for everybody.
Yeah, and I said I'll do my map right along with you. So I that's what I'm saying. I think that political unrest is going to be a big factor in many of these different elections, and even sometimes we had some political unrest in some major cities in some key states that maybe didn't get a lot of play. Of course, we hear so much about Portland all the time, but Portland, you can go ahead. But Oregon, you can go ahead and make solid blue. It's like the events that are happening in Portland are not necessarily going to shift the election of the country, but then also the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I mean, I'd already thought Donald Trump was going to win before that, and now I believe even more now. And one of the reasons that I do is because Clarence Thomas has been talking about for years with close friends and family that he has no interest in dying on the bench. Have you heard this before?
I have not.
Yeah, a little bit about Clarence Thomas for anybody who doesn't know this at all. Clarence Thomas is his personal life is a bit boring. He likes to travel around the country. Like, he likes to get into an RV, drive around, go to like state parks and other historic sites, and he tends to like park in Walmart parking lots and just sleep there. It's kind of like a thing that he does. And I say boring because I'm like, it's not like we're talking about a guy who's like, going out to Vegas and doing coke and everything. I mean, he lives a pretty middle America lifestyle. He doesn't want to die on the bench. He actually does want to have a retired life where he gets to do that even more. And apparently he also aspires to world travel. So, going out the Ginsburg way, like hanging on for dear life is probably not going to be his thing. So let's say in the next 4 years his health deteriorates. I mean, or he decides it's now time to retire because Donald Trump's in the White House. I think everybody who's every person who's voting conservative right now knows that Donald Trump for another 4 years could potentially pick another Supreme Court justice. And I think that is the number one voting issue, is that they want to completely control the Supreme Court. And especially now that the left is talking about stacking the courts, which I think is a mistake. I think it just creates an arms race. So these are the things that loom for the election. I think that's what people vote for. I don't necessarily think they vote for the data, because I hear this all the time when I talk about how I feel about elections, and I say the word feel a lot. Like, this is how I feel. This is how people feel about things. And I've had somebody call me out and say, well, nothing you're talking about has anything to do with data. You're just talking about feelings. And I'm like, people don't vote your damn data. They vote their feelings. And Trump's debate performance the other night, I mean, I'm sitting here watching it with, friends, and we're just laughing hysterically. It was funny. But Trump knows full well that he doesn't have to necessarily perform that well in the debate. As long as Joe Biden doesn't perform very well, and the more discord that he sows and the more chaos he sows creates disaffected voters, and disaffected voters favor him. I think that with the political unrest and with the inability for us to actually stimulate the economy during the coronavirus is going to create a lot of disaffected voters. So that leads me to believe that I think things are starting to favor Trump. Let me say, is there any of that I've said that you would say is completely wrong?
I wouldn't say completely wrong, but there are certainly parts that I don't quite agree with.
Right. That's fine. That's why we talk, right?
Yeah. But so I mean, I guess
that's the feeling I
agree
get.
with you in the sense that Corona and economic woes have created a lot of instability. And it's also possible that there is underreporting of Trump support because of the embarrassment factor. That being said, actually, while I agree with you in general that polls are not everything and that they're not 100% predictive models by any stretch of the imagination, I do think that despite 2016, they have a track record of sort of gauging where things are at.
Mm-hmm.
And even in 2016, if we look at, say, what 538 said, the whole premise is that, yes, we think that Hillary has the advantage, but there's a 30% chance Trump will win. So you run it 10 times, 3 of them Trump wins, that's pretty plausible. And I still think that Hillary was the favorite in that election. She just choked in the states that mattered the most because she's terrible at politics, but, that's...
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you're right though that people do vote their feelings and not based on the facts or the supposed facts, as it were. That being said, there is also a bandwagon effect when people think someone is winning, and then they will abandon ship and join the winning side. So I think that's why a lot of media tries to push narratives about somebody really kicking ass, or they also do a thing with talking about the tightening of races as if it has to happen at the end of every presidential cycle. Remember in 2008, they were trying to push the narrative that McCain was tightening up the race at the last minute. Then they got a new batch of polls which showed the exact opposite. So they were trying to create a narrative based on this is just what happens, and then they had to scuttle it in favor of, well, actually, there's no evidence that that's true.
And see, I hate when that happens, because that's what tells me that when people get told, well, the polling says you're wrong, and then you immediately get this feeling of like, well, how many times do the polls have to be wrong? Like, and how many times these polls get doctored? And these polls are conducted by humans who are flawed. And, you know, and the country we live in right now is heavily politically polarized. And I mean, there are people out there I know who feel that if a poll favors Donald Trump, there's no need to even report it. Like, they don't, like, anybody does not want to do anything that would possibly look like it's favoring him, you know, regardless of whether it's truth or not. And I think this narrative that the right and even the Donald has like latched onto, where like the problems that are happening in America are happening in Democratic run cities that are not accepting his help. I'm finding the more people I speak to, the more that narrative is actually catching on and makes sense to them. I mean, have you heard that?
Heard what exactly?
Oh, that the issue is not the problem with the government being run centrally. That the issue is the problem is that these Democratic run cities that are being run straight in the ground and are having all these issues and problems won't accept the help of the federal government. And I think he even alluded to that during the debate the other night too. But I'm finding that narrative is actually catching on. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've talked to a number of people. I haven't heard anybody repeat that particular thing.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows?
Right.
I know a lot. Some of Trump's messaging has gotten traction with a lot of Middle America, such as the anti-Antifa messaging. That being said, I guess, you know, people vote their overall feeling or impression, and a lot of the people who might accept some of Trump's framing also still think that he has really fucked up the coronavirus.
Right. His announcement the other day that he did not want to even talk about another stimulus until after the election. I mean, I guess what you have to take away from that is that I don't want to talk about a stimulus package till after you guys reelect me.
Yeah.
which is so damn Trump.
No, also, I think that's damaging. And another thing you said in your initial opener that I really disagree with is I actually think that debate performance did some damage.
You think so?
Yeah. I noticed, I was looking at responses by people who are normally Trump cheerleaders.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not see a lot of enthusiasm. They tried to just say the debate was a draw. And normally these are people who, no matter what happens, they'll say that Trump just won a brilliant strategic victory. So if they're saying it's a draw, that's the equivalent of a normal person admitting that their candidate just died.
Right. I can see that, but I have a feeling though that the Trump campaign, whether Trump knows this or not, I think he knows the disaffected voter thing favors him.
Could be.
I think he doesn't mind if people watch that and think the system is broken.
Yeah, because I've also seen narratives where people were saying that Biden did well in the debate, which is also why I quit using Facebook, because I had a lot of people I know don't support fucking Biden legitimately. And I just scrolled through and they're like, yeah, I think he actually held his own in that debate. I'm like, no, he was really terrible, but Trump made himself just look like a complete fucking asshole going after his sons and just
that I don't know Beau Biden thing was definitely one of his low points. You know, remember that thing they were talking about recently where they were saying that Trump was walking around those soldiers' graves and he was saying that these guys were like, you know, losers and he couldn't believe anybody would ever join the military.
Yeah.
So I was talking to Sean about it and I'm like, look, I don't think Trump actually said that. I think he knows people are listening to him and that he's got leaks all over his White House. And I just don't think Trump would ever vocalize something like that. But I think Trump thinks it.
Oh yeah.
I don't think that he can conceive of anybody doing anything selflessly. Like the idea of altruism to him has got to be, I mean, for him, it might as well be like, you know, as magical as a magic dragon. Like, I don't think he thinks it. I don't think he thinks it exists. So there's probably no doubt in my mind he can look around at a bunch of these guys who signed up for the military, you know, at World War II or whatever war, and he would say, "Oh, you're a bunch of chumps and losers, and I can't believe you took, you know, rock bottom prices to go die in a jungle somewhere." But he wouldn't vocalize that. I just don't believe that for a second.
Although, I mean, before 9/11, that was not an uncommon sentiment. There were a lot of people who had a fairly
Right.
negative attitude about the military, and he's a product of that time period. So I find it very shocking that he would think that.
No, not at all. Like I said, I think he completely thinks it.
Yeah,
So
I think he probably does, but I think you're right. Well, he's pretty dumb, but I don't think he's quite that dumb to say something like that out loud.
exactly. I mean, he's aware. He's aware there's people all over his White House that talk to the press and everything, and for him to say something like that, it's just no. I mean, remember how much shit Obama got that one time when he got on the helicopter and he accidentally forgot to salute the Marine?
Yeah, or the time, or every time when they would do the Pledge of Allegiance, and they would take a picture of him before he had gotten his hand up, and like, see, he didn't put his hand up.
Yeah, you're like, oh God, please spare me.
Yeah, we gotta respect the flag. Look, how big's his flag pin? Not big enough, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, not big enough, you know. It's got to be big. It's got to be huge.
Yeah, it's gotta be huge. It's gotta shine. Has to drag his lapel down.
You're like, after I wear this thing for a day, I'm gonna have to have this suit tailored.
Yeah, it's like now the right side of my suit is just sagging now. All right.
So kind of about a couple of minutes ago there, while I was talking, I started to click away some states here. So I don't know if you want to take it one state at a time, but I suppose we can go ahead and click some states away here, right?
Right.
All right. Yeah, Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada. We could just put those all blue.
Yeah.
There was a possibility that Nevada could have been competitive for the Republicans, but it looks like that possibility might have gone by the wayside. The Republican Party there has not looked very good. They haven't established much of a ground game. I mean, I wouldn't go so far as to say they're conceding it, but I don't think they consider Nevada a priority. So I think we can go ahead and just make that blue.
Fair enough.
Of course, Alaska red,
Yeah.
Hawaii blue.
Also, it's weird that they didn't fight harder in Nevada, given that Biden has struggled with Hispanics, and that's been a strength for Trump.
Right. I find the Nevada thing very interesting because, I mean, you're right. Also, it has 6 electoral votes. I mean, I feel like once you're at 6 electoral votes, then you're a state that you know should be fought for. Like when you're below 6 electoral votes, like okay, you might be able to fudge this one a little bit, but as you start getting down to the math, and you start getting into the Rust Belt, you know, and like what the 20 counties that actually matter, you look back and you realize, man, that 6 extra electoral votes could actually put you over the top. So, I mean, if I'm working the Republican Party, I'm trying to win Nevada, but you know, because it's one of those, you know, kind of in between states you had a chance at. So anyway,
Yeah.
also it's not like there's a bunch of people in Nevada that don't vote Republican.
Who is running the Trump campaign this time? Is it Kellyanne again, or?
That's actually a great question. I'm not even sure.
Because I've seen him say and do a few things where I know he's either not taking advice or he's taking some very bad advice.
It's not Corey Lewandowski, right?
I don't think so. And it's
Okay,
because
I think he is still. Because I think Lewandowski is still working on the campaign, but I think recently Lewandowski said that he was going to go into quarantine because of COVID, and of course, you know, because it's spreading through the White House. But then he was seen publicly out at like a sporting event or something, you know. So I think he was getting some shit for that on Reddit recently.
could be.
Yeah.
Also, Trump's recent COVID stunt, where he said that there's nothing to worry about after going to the hospital, that might have been a big misstep.
Yeah. I don't think that that's going to be enough of a misstep to change anyone's mind. Like, I don't necessarily think that there's going to be a lot of people who are going to say, well, I'm voting for Biden, I think now I'm switching to Trump over that. But it definitely didn't look good. But once again, I think that's ultimately something that I keep coming back to is I see more people becoming disaffected and not voting at all, more so than I see them deciding that we're too polarized for people to say that they're jumping ship to the other one. I mean, I would be shocked if there's that many people out there who haven't already decided who would actually move to the other candidate. I think the election is decided by who stays home.
Could be.
And that's the part that kept bugging me after our last talk. I was like, because one of the things I'm actually excited to see about this election, I mean, legitimately, is when it's done and we've got our winner and we've got all the electoral map in front of us as it actually happens. I'm always so curious to see, what did I miss? You know, what's something that that I didn't account for? You know, like.
Oh, you just faded for a sec. Shit. Danny? Danny? Shit.
Just that little. Then those are the things that people write books about that we get fascinated by.
Yeah.
You know, Pennsylvania, Utah at red. Okay, I've heard some talk about Arizona possibly going blue. I think it's total bullshit.
I agree.
However, there is a possibility though that Arizona could become more of a purple-blue state, possibly another generation. That state looks like it could be switching more in that direction, but it hasn't even really begun to really make that turn yet. So if anybody's talking about Arizona could possibly be a state that the Democrats could steal this election, I just don't think so at all.
Well, what's interesting, because I know you're not into polls, but there's about a 10.
That's fine. I don't mind. I don't mind if you mention them.
Yeah, Arizona has about a 10-point gap in favor of both Biden and the Democrat running for the Senate. So it's like 50-40 right now.
That is very interesting.
Which is bigger than a lot of the states we think of as being way more winnable for the Democrats. That's one poll I am fairly suspicious of. That being said, it has been consistent though. So,
but once again, I think that goes back to what we were saying before. I mean, you know, I think Arizona is one of those states right now that if you're operating in the Democratic Party, you say we need to start moving resources to that state.
Oh, and they have.
Like you could start to build. Absolutely, you could start building something in that state. And once again, that's 11 electoral votes. I mean, take everything we said about Nevada and nearly double it.
Exactly.
Like you want to fight for Arizona.
Not only that, but one other thing I find odd about Arizona supposedly being so favorable to the Democrats is that we know nationally the Hispanic vote has not been going well for Democrats this cycle. They're only winning about 61% as opposed to the normal, 70+%.
Yeah.
So
it hasn't been automatic.
Yeah, so it's also one of the biggest mistakes of the Biden campaign is there hasn't been a lot of Hispanic outreach. The guy who's the head of Bernie's Hispanic outreach, Chuck Rocha, effectively said, yeah, if you give me money, I'll come work for your campaign. And he's gotten no phone calls, even though Bernie dominated that vote in the primary.
And that's interesting, too, because I heard this from Julian Castro. You know, he's saying, you know, I'm the only, you know, Latino candidate on the stage. And none. He said he has not been contacted by the party at all for any Hispanic outreach for the campaign.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Which is odd because when he's an Obama alumni, you would think that Biden would want to get that nostalgia factor and be like, see, we got our old HHS, well, not HUD secretary, sorry. We got our old HUD secretary here, one of my former opponents. Now we're best buds.
Yeah, the team's all back together, but I don't think it can be understated how important the family values is to Hispanic voters. That is something that the right can really make a lot of headway with in the future, and also, I mean, Hispanic support for Trump is way higher than people expected, considering some of his policies. And like, I mean, if I'm a Republican, I'm looking at that and saying, you know, if there's going to be pushback and they're going to hold on to a place like Arizona, then, you know, it really will be a war for the Hispanic hearts and minds.
Yeah.
So we can put Montana, home of Ted Kaczynski, at Republican.
Yes, I think we can. Safely.
Wyoming, of course, red.
You know,
Colorado, blue.
One thing I've always found potentially interesting. So if you were a left-wing billionaire, you know, what George Soros supposedly is, like a dedicated communist operative or whatever the fuck people on the right say, Why not support mass immigration to Wyoming? You'd only need a couple thousand, well, what, maybe 100,000, 150,000 people who are all left-wingers from somewhere in Europe. Put them in Wyoming. Now you have a safe blue state worth 3 votes, which, is at least something, and you basically get 2 Senate seats.
Yeah, I think that's the most important part. You get a House seat and two whole Senate seats.
2 Senate seats for an open plain where there are fewer people than in a standard congressional district. I think it's barely half, if less than half of what you get in a normal congressional district.
Well, we can. I guess we can make it official then. Thersites the historian puts the rubber stamp on the Wyoming voter scandal project.
No, I mean, like, I've just always wondered. Supposedly these billionaires have these nefarious grand plans. That one's not even that hard to do if you have that kind of resource.
Yeah. That's interesting. You mentioned that. The Rajneeshis in Oregon almost pulled that off by bringing homeless people to Oregon.
Oh, I remember that. Did you see the Netflix documentary?
Wild Country on Netflix. It's like if the Rajneeshis could figure out that if you bring in homeless people and get them to vote, you can take over political power. I wonder why George Soros can't figure that out. Yeah. I was gonna say if there was ever a blue takeover of the West, that would be something.
I mean, because Wyoming again is the easiest one, just because of the total number of people who live there. You don't even need that many people to make the difference. You can make it a left wing stronghold and still have well under 1 million people total.
Wow, 2 whole senators.
I know, 2 whole senators for the price of taking in some random refugees. I guess you have to do a political screening. It's like, all right. Here's what determines whether you get in the U.S. What are your political views? Take the political compass test. If you score in this quadrant, you make it. And we're going to settle you in scenic Wyoming.
You're going to love it.
Yeah.
It's cold. It's remote. It's desolate. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, and you'll be within 50 miles of the Dick Cheney estate.
Yeah. That's just if he's got a gun, don't go near him.
Yeah.
So I guess we could solidly put Colorado Democrat. I mean,
agree.
I haven't heard anything about the Republicans competing in Colorado.
I think Hickenlooper's losing his Senate race there. He's trying to run against somebody and he's not winning.
Oh, that's good. There's always good news in the world when you can find it, huh?
Yeah, it's a close race, but he is down to the Republican incumbent, or maybe it's an open seat. I'm not sure, but I think it's an incumbent. New Mexico.
New Mexico is an interesting one to me because my system is actually breaking down in New Mexico. There's so little seemingly happening there, and my apologies to anyone listening from New Mexico. Maybe I'm just ignorant about this, but there seems to be so little actually happening in New Mexico that I don't even know how to call it one way or another. Like, I guess my instinct would say it's a Democratic state, but I mean, educate me. Is there anything I'm missing?
I can't think of anything coming out of New Mexico either.
Yeah, I mean, as I'm saying, like, I thought, let me check out and see what's happening in New Mexico. Anything interesting? Anything? Not really. I mean, it seems. I mean, if there's a state in the union that's quiet right now, I feel like it's New Mexico.
Yeah, that's another thing I've never quite gotten about New Mexico is why it is politically different than a lot of its bordering states, even though I don't really know what the difference is. Is there a cultural difference I'm missing? I don't really know.
I mean, my instinct would tell me there's probably a historic reason why, which I'm not even close to qualified to talking about, but I bet there is.
Maybe
wouldn't shock me if something that goes back to the 19th century.
I wonder if it's just a matter of where the population is distributed. I mean, maybe all the population's in Albuquerque and Santa Fe.
I mean, that very well could be, too. I mean, boy. I mean, hell, anybody listening to this who's from New Mexico, I mean, start lighting up the comment section. I'm curious.
Yeah, I don't know. I genuinely have no idea, so I'm curious about that.
I'm gonna follow my instinct and just make it blue.
Yeah, I agree. Also, New Mexico is interesting, though. It was the home of Breaking Bad, so it can't be that boring. I'm sure.
I was thinking exactly that, Yeah. Yes, the ABQ, dog.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the reason is just that the meth trade treats people well, and people don't want to rock up their political affiliation lest the profitable meth trade were to dry up. You know, you gotta worry
All
about
right.
job security.
So I kind of am going down like kind of like rows. So I'm just going to call them out pretty much right now, and you tell me if any of these you think I'm wrong.
Okay.
North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, red.
Okay, I agree, especially on the first five. One point about Nebraska: do you think the Omaha district will go blue, or do you think that the whole state will go red?
See, I was wondering about that myself. I think the whole state's going to go red, but this is another one too where I wasn't able to find anything that would tell me one way that would tell me that there was any kind of surging Democratic presence, or was there anything that maybe gave us indication that Biden could be more popular there. I mean, I don't know. As far as I can see, as far as everything I'm reading, I'm seeing a red state.
I'm inclined to agree. I think that it has to be a fairly high turnout election for that Omaha district to flip. 2008 it happened. I don't think it happened in 2012, although I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, I'd have to look back on that too.
And I'm still curious about what the turnout will be for this cycle, because on the one hand, because absentee ballots are being encouraged so heavily, voting is now in many ways easier than ever. All you gotta do is, mail something out for 55 cents.
Oh, and that's another thing we didn't even get a chance to discuss last time was, I mean, the mail-in voting thing with the different standards of different states. I mean, this could potentially be a disaster. I mean, there are states that will accept your ballot as long as it's postmarked on the day of or before the election, up to 2 weeks afterwards.
Yes.
And of course you've got the Donald out there, I mean, doing what he does best, and saying I want a result the night of. But with the mail-in voting and this, I mean, we may not be able to have a result the night of. And of course, I'm fairly certain, no matter the outcome, there's going to be finger pointing between the two sides, claiming the other side stole the election.
Yeah, that's
I think that's an utter certainty.
I agree. It's not going to be pretty unless somebody manages to win overwhelmingly on the first night. I mean, even
exactly,
if
which I see neither side having a path to a landslide.
Yeah, let's see. Maybe if Biden somehow gets even a narrow victory confirmed on the night of the election, and then there are a few states outstanding still, that might be enough to offset civil unrest. But if it's not decided on the night of the election, there are going to be serious problems.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Completely. It's actually something I'm very, very concerned about.
Yes, me too. Although, even though Columbus is a fairly big city, we haven't had any major issues with street violence. But I only live like 5 miles from downtown, so I hope that whatever bullshit breaks out between Trump and Biden people does not spill over into Columbus.
Well, here in New Orleans, we had demonstrations, we had some of that stuff, but I mean, other than a few very small incidents, not a whole lot happened, and it mostly quieted down. Yeah, I mean, it's. I mean, we all know New Orleans is going to go solidly for Joe Biden, but then the state of Louisiana will go solidly for Trump.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I wish I had some insight on local politics here. I think it'd be much cooler to live in a swing state, but,
So, let's talk about Texas, your neighbor. There's been a lot of speculation there. I mean, I think it goes red, but and I think you think that too, but do you want to
I have strong opinions on Texas. Like anytime I hear somebody say Texas is going blue, I immediately know that not to listen to them. They don't know what they're talking about. Texas is going to keep getting redder. Like Texas is becoming the place that disaffected conservatives around the country are now running to. And even Texas with its high Hispanic population has shown to have a high number of conservatives among that population as well. They're only getting more right in their politics. And also Dallas and Houston, they actually took a lot of steps to prepare for civil unrest in the city, and therefore most of that civil unrest was actually calmed down fairly quickly. I mean, I understand some parts of Houston got kind of bad, but they were the parts of Houston that, frankly, the Houston Police Department didn't give a shit about. So, I think that Texas is. I think they're getting redder. I think they're looking at it as. I think a lot of them might actually be looking at themselves as the last bastion of the country's sanity. Like, no joke. And I don't even see anything in the future that says this state is even coming close to switching blue. I mean, you might have a few local elections in a few places around Texas that you might be able to see possibly a Democrat come in, but on a national level, no. Don't see it.
I have not heard that before.
No, I mean that's. I think that's how the people in Texas look at themselves right now. And I know, some of this might be anecdotal in a way, but a lot of disaffected people who don't even necessarily consider themselves conservatives, who ran from California, ran to Texas. So and also Texas is also being seen as tech friendly.
Yeah.
So that's something that maybe I think makes people think that it could be taking some kind of a left-wing turn, but those people assume that people who work in tech are necessarily by default left and more democratic, and I would disagree with that as well. So, take it from somebody who lives in Louisiana and has been to Texas several times. There is no Texas left-wing turn.
Well, except in Austin, of course, but that's always been the case, and it clearly hasn't made an impact on the state level.
Right. Austin and also Austin on the whole is a way smaller city than most of the other big cities in Texas that still vote pretty solidly Republican.
See, actually, I want to visit
you've got
Austin
people
at
out
some point.
Oh yeah. Actually, I mean, it's a cool place. Like, I had a lot of fun there, and it does have a very similar vibe to New Orleans, so I kind of dig it in that way. But yeah, I mean, it is a cool place, but of course, like a lot of places where a lot of liberals go, it becomes unaffordable. The people they want to save, they definitely don't want in their neighborhoods.
Yeah, so what I like about the idea of there being like this Portland style city as Texas's capital is that, especially back in the age of when they would drive the huge cars with the bullhorns and all that bullshit, you elect these ultra conservative lawmakers, and then they're forced to live and work in a city that's full of hippies.
And that's where Alex Jones is born.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. I mean, that's... Yeah, even then, in a place like Austin that considers itself to be, kind of weird and strange and, different from the rest of Texas, it's still like, hey, we still got Alex Jones over here.
Yeah.
There's still people around there that are very... I want to make this into an adjective, or Alex Jonesy.
So, speaking of Alex Jones, did you hear that recently he did a little broadcast where he said that Trump's COVID symptoms were purely psychosomatic and they didn't actually have it?
I've never heard that before, but I love it already.
Yeah, so he was like, look, it's a false positive. You often test positive for things you don't actually have when you're tired and dispirited.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so your body fakes microbes that show up on test? Okay. That's new. But then again, I mean, to be fair, Alex Jones is obviously our leading expert on science. I mean, look at his supplement collection. The most scientifically advanced supplements known to man, male vitality, and all that bullshit. So, I mean, if anybody would know, it would be him, obviously, but...
I am well aware that Alex Jones has the worst presentation of any major media figure alive today, but I still cannot stop listening to him.
No, he's hilarious. Also, I hope he does more of those male vitality things and he tries to do more poses, because that dude's gotten fucking fat.
Yeah. I mean, I know he's been an alcoholic for quite a while now, and and that his life has been, I mean, outside of his professional life, I mean, has been kind of a downward spiral. So I suppose I'm not surprised by any of that, but I mean, the guy's hysterical. I think that's actually one thing that Joe Rogan's completely right about when he talks about him is the guy should be doing stand-up comedy.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, he is fucking funnier than people who call themselves comics.
And his timing is amazing. And he's got that great voice. Like, I can listen to him talk about anything. If he actually made sense, I think that this guy would be narrating documentaries and...
Right. I mean, how can you simultaneously, to me, have the worst media presentation I've ever seen, but I can't stop listening to you? How do I account for that?
I don't know.
Am I just crazy?
The dude's got crazy charisma. I mean, Alex Jones has undeniable charisma. It's just batshit fucking insane.
And there's something just thoroughly entertaining about knowing that people like that exist.
Well, also, I've noticed that he's a very polarizing figure. I think he only appeals to males. I think it's almost impossible for women to watch him. And the reason I say that is because...
I never thought about that. I don't think I've ever met a woman who does say I'm an Alex Jones fan. So, I mean, I'm sure they're out there, but I've never met one.
When I first met Tina, I told her about Alex Jones, and she didn't know who he was. So I showed her the clip about the gay frogs or whatever, and she said, "Who is this fucking asshole?" And like Tina rarely gets upset about anything, but she wanted to murder him within 5 minutes, and she decided that she hated him. And again, that is not common for her. She's very easygoing and not one to get angry, but she was ready to fight him after 5 minutes.
I mean, I wouldn't want to fight him. I think that man would tear me apart.
I don't know. I feel like he's probably mostly talk because he knows. I think he understands that in a world where political correctness is the norm, you can get in somebody's face and talk amazing amounts of shit and nothing will happen.
Right. But I'll tell you though, I bet he's got some of that crazy strength though.
He might, but I still think that part of it is an act. Or maybe it started out as an act. I don't know. My suspicion is that, like a lot of bullies, if he actually took a fist to the face, he would be too shocked to fight back, even if he was physically capable of it.
Yeah, actually, I think there is a video where he actually got into a fight with somebody, and that's essentially what happened. Is he got kind of beat up and put to the ground. Like he's not like a fighter. He's not like a warrior, But from what I understand, early on, he had he got a cult following around Austin as being this kind of, weird guy on the radio who talked about conspiracy theories and aliens and shit. And then later on, though, as his personal life kind of deteriorated, he became like an alcoholic, and he has become crazier and crazier in his views because before he was kind of part of that whole keep Austin weird fabric thing that was going on in that area of Texas at the time. He has, when he was in his child custody hearings, his wife's attorney has played segments of his show for the judge and saying, this guy is unhinged and shouldn't be around his own children. And so he as a defense strategy, he said in court that it's an act. And of course, people who believe him and believe his followers are saying, well, he had to say that. He's trying to get his kids back. But I like I said, it's all very personal with him. So I try not to make that too big a deal. But I think he knows that the more outlandish he is, the more people pay attention. There's no way he doesn't know that.
Yeah, I think he's probably observed the pattern by this point. I mean, he's made a lot of money doing his shtick.
Right.
But
let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and make. I was gonna say I'm gonna start from the bottom on this one real quick. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and make Louisiana red.
Yep.
Just where I sit now. Arkansas red. Missouri. I'm gonna put Missouri red, but Missouri is another one of those states who I find interesting that it could be possibly Democratic or maybe competitive in a few years, maybe a generation or so, but I don't see it right now. And also, I don't know if this gets talked about enough, but Kansas City is a very conservative city. And most of the state, especially in the Branson area and all that, I mean, these people mostly vote pretty solidly Republican. And St. Louis is this kind of sort of I would say traditional Democratic city as we now know it. If Kansas City could ever make like a left-wing turn at some point, it could actually switch the state. But we're talking about something years down the line. That's
Yeah.
possible, but not right now.
I mean, I
Not right
remember
now.
while I used to live not far from the Kansas side of
Hmm.
Kansas City in my teen years. My dad was in the military. We were stationed fairly nearby. And
Yeah.
in Kansas, it's so conservative that the eastern part of the state is called liberal Kansas, but everybody there is a Republican. And the difference between liberal Kansas and conservative Kansas, in liberal Kansas, people are against abortion, but they don't want to kill the doctors. Conservative Kansas, it's fine to kill the doctors. That's really the difference.
See, I knew about liberal Kansas because all growing up, when I would be driving up and down the road, like on road trips, there's a lot of truckers that live out there because it's the center of the country.
Yeah.
So they're able to move around between these different states to be able to get more contracts and more jobs for trucking. So a lot of these trucks driving around would all say liberal Kansas across them. And they'd be like, well, that's a weird name for a place.
Yeah, it's not very
Yeah.
liberal, at least not in the normal sense. I remember in 2008, I was still on Facebook a lot, and some of my old high school friends had called themselves moderates, but then they were talking about how if Obama got elected, it would be the end of the federal government in America as we know it. And they were just having a full-blown meltdown when Obama won. And also, to be fair, these guys were exactly the demographic that McCain was sort of tailor-made for. Because he had been their favorite politician for several years at that point, even before he was a candidate. So they were literally having a fucking meltdown over Obama winning. And then they said, we're the true moderates. I'm like, you're moderate in Kansas. You know, like Kansas is way to the fucking right of the country, dude.
Yeah. Another thing about Kansas City, and I think a lot of the listeners to this could probably look up this story because it did happen a little while back. Kansas is one of the only cities, Kansas City is one of the only cities that I'm aware of that took Martin Luther King's name off of a street.
Damn.
And apparently it was because they said it was confusing people because it wasn't the traditional street name and that it was changing names to Martin Luther King, and then the original street name would pick up on the next block. But there's some people in Kansas City who were actually interviewed around the area that said, if you're going to take down our monuments, we're going to take down yours.
Damn.
So I think that's something to be said for Kansas City, that it's unlikely it takes a left-wing turn anytime soon. But, you know, it's possible, but maybe not for another generation or two. That had to be reevaluated later.
Yeah, if there is a left-wing turn in Kansas City, it would probably be on the Kansas side where there's more poverty. The Missouri side would be more likely to take the turn than the Kansas side. The Kansas side is the sort of prosperous side. Missouri has poor people.
Yeah.
So if the poor people become more radicalized, in that case, Missouri might become blue. Either that, or if there's a growth of the sort of yuppie population, because right now they're trending blue.
So Iowa, we can just keep red. That's obvious.
We'll come back to that.
Minnesota. Yeah. Minnesota. This is one of the ones right here. What's your perspective on Minnesota?
It'll be close. The Democrats will squeak it. It's been trending more red, but it'll take a while before it is truly competitive or leans red. And by a while, I mean maybe by the end of this decade.
As far as Minnesota goes, we're pretty much in lockstep on that one. I think that because of the unrest that occurred, it's going to start to lean more right, and I would not be surprised at all if this starts to become a swing red state at some point. I would not be shocked at that at all. And I'll put a caveat on this one. It's like I said in the beginning of the video. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. That's fine. I'm always curious, what are the factors I didn't see? If Minnesota goes red, I'm not going to be surprised, though, at all.
Yeah. So to circle back to Iowa for a second.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, I kind of glazed over Iowa, but I have a tendency to glaze over those states that we just know are going Republican.
Well, okay, so there has been a lot of discontent about Trump within the state itself due to the tariffs, because they hurt some of the Iowa farmers. So his poll numbers recovered from that, but early on in his presidency, people had turned against him, and now then he recovered, and now it looks like he once again is in danger of losing. So I don't necessarily think Iowa will go blue, but this is one that I think is hard to predict. If I were making the map based on my own predictions, I'd leave this one brown.
Okay. Like I said, I'm still going to keep it red there.
It's probably safe money, but
Yeah, I think it's a safe money there too. And people I know who know people from Iowa, I mean, they kind of tell me like, look, the identity politics stuff there it doesn't necessarily come in for a smooth landing,
no.
and I think it might be possible that even if once again, if the tariff and the farmer thing could open up a possibility for the Democrats, then the Democrats would probably shoot themselves directly in the foot going back to identity politics.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, okay, Mississippi, I'm calling red. Tennessee, I'm calling red.
Yep.
Kentucky, I'm calling red. That's another one right there. I know some people are like, oh, Amy, that McGrath has got a chance against Mitch McConnell. And I'm just like, shut the fuck up. There is no chance. I mean, I lived in Kentucky for a little bit. Those are some of the most conservative people I've ever been around in my life.
Yeah, also, McGrath is unelectable. She has no platform. If you're going to knock out a popular Republican, you have to strike a contrast. You have to have a message. And even then, you're fighting a disadvantage. But Charles Booker would have had a chance just by being different. McGrath is exactly the kind of Democrat that McConnell has beaten like 40 goddamn times already.
Right, and also if you're a voter in Kentucky and you essentially are electing at the senatorial level the person who is actually calling the shots in the country, who decides what happens, and you're just going to give that up? No, stop.
I mean, people in rural Kentucky actually do dislike Mitch McConnell, but that doesn't mean that they would vote against the Republican.
Exactly. I come back to the Supreme Court again. He is. Mitch McConnell has delivered a 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court. I mean,
through some fairly underhanded means too.
Exactly, and why would you care? It's like if you just know you've been delivered the everything you could possibly want. To have that 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court, that is the dream. And I mean, if I were a Republican, I mean, I'd get Mitch McConnell tattooed on my nutsack. So I mean, what a winner! What a winner! That's all he does is win.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he should be an inspiration to people who have zero charisma and are ugly as shit, because it proves that there's no barrier to power.
Yeah, it's no barrier to power. In politics is show business for ugly people. It's no barrier to power. If you have, I mean, the maneuvers that he has pulled off, I mean, I think would make some Roman senators blush.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, once again, I mean, if you're a conservative in this country and you all you want to do is win by any means necessary. I mean, Mitch McConnell, you might as well go ahead and put a shrine up to your house in him. Like, people used to have shrines of FDR.
Yeah, I mean, I would say you could put up a poster of McConnell, but then you have to look at him, so maybe more of an abstract representation would be more fitting.
Yeah, like maybe like a Picasso or something like that. So you don't have that ugly jowl on your wall.
And those dead eyes staring out from his turtle shell.
God. But I mean, there is absolutely no doubt about it. He is the shrewdest politician alive in America today. And I mean, and anybody who doesn't think so, I have no idea what planet you're from.
Yeah, he's
what planet
easily
you're
the
living
most
on.
effective senator.
All he does is win.
Yeah,
all he does is win, and he doesn't care how he looks when he does it. As long as he wins, he's perfectly fine. It's mind blowing. Illinois, I guess we can go ahead and make blue, unless there's anything about Illinois that
basically
would change
for the Republicans to win Illinois, what would happen is you'd have to have a meteorite just big enough to destroy Chicago without wrecking everything around it, and then you take out the biggest blue center, and now the state's red. But aside from that, no, that's going blue.
Yeah, and Wisconsin, I'm putting Wisconsin at red.
Yeah, I think we did that one at the outset. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Not really. I think there's been a lot of unrest there. I think there's a lot of disaffected voters, and I think there's enough people who are very conservative in Wisconsin that they're going to go out and vote for Donald Trump again. And I just at this point right now, I see Wisconsin as a red state. I mean, that's maybe with a future candidate, maybe not like a Donald Trump. We could see maybe Wisconsin go blue, but I'm starting to see Wisconsin turn as a red state.
Yeah, I think Wisconsin is kind of similar to Ohio and also Minnesota to a lesser extent, Michigan as well. If you really want to win as a Democrat, you have to have some union representation or strength on your ticket. And,
right, and actually, that brings us to the big one right here. I mean, I'm calling Ohio red for sure.
Okay. I'm not 100% sure that. I was sure about that until a few weeks ago, but now I would put it more as a toss-up.
Oh, what's changed?
The only thing that's changed is that I happen to be out in the countryside, and so because I live here, that's kind of how I take the temperature politically. So obviously your cities, Columbus, Cleveland especially, will be blue as hell. That's a given. But in 2016, I knew Ohio was lost because I happened to go on a date just outside of the city. And there were people on an overpass with Trump signs, and it was cold as hell that day, but they're out there with hot chocolate and shit, just proudly demonstrating for Trump. And I also noticed that as soon as you pass out of city limits, there were just all Trump signs and nothing else. But this year, I've noticed that there are a smattering of Biden signs outside of city limits. And to me, that talks about margins, so I think that Ohio is actually in play. But again, this is just a subjective evaluation on my part. I could be wrong about this. I haven't really looked at that many polls, although when I do look at the polls, they're pretty tied right now, which probably favors the Republicans. But I don't think it will
I would say so. And actually, even to kind of go against my whole, like polls thing, polling in some of the key districts around Ohio seem to either be a toss-up or favoring Donald Trump. So I feel like the more I look at it, the more I think that Ohio is going to be red. I don't think by any means it's going to be a runaway for him, but I think he wins enough votes in Ohio that he delivers that as a red state.
Probably. That being said, like if we'd had this conversation 2 weeks ago, I'd have said that one's 100% locked for Trump. No conversation to be had. But
there's a change there. Huh?
Yeah, so there's been a change. I think that there is a chance for Biden, even though he's running the wrong campaign to win Ohio. His stance on unions and labor plus picking Kamala, that was designed to not do well in Ohio. If you really wanted to win a place like Ohio, you should have put Baldwin on the ticket. Or Sherrod Brown even. But I guess he locked into the woman thing, so it'd have to be Tammy Baldwin would be the only person who would help in Ohio. But yeah, so he might win despite making all the wrong moves in the state.
So by the way, Michigan is one I'm really curious to hear your perspective on, because Michigan has kind of confounded me a little bit. Michigan's becoming a hard one for me to call. Now, if you go by my metric, it looks like Michigan's going to go blue.
Yeah.
Because the Republican Party has not actually done very well in Michigan. They've had a lot of gaffes, and if I'm not mistaken, also some scandal. But I don't know about a down ticket effect, and also Michigan did kind of see its fair share of some of the civil unrest. So Michigan's somewhat of a curiosity for me.
I feel like Michigan is at the heart of the legitimacy crisis in the sense that people there are generally disaffected. And sort of my theory of if you're generally disaffected and you hate everybody, you'll go with whoever you hate less. So I think that then it becomes a roll call, and in that case, the Democrats win because there are more Democrats than Republicans in the state, and that's traditionally what they've done. But I don't think that it will be a blowout. It'll be pretty close. And again, part of the problem is that Joe Biden did not put someone on the ticket who represents labor. If he had someone who represented labor on the ticket, then it would be an easy win. But because he has Kamala on the ticket and because he's there as well, it will be close. So that's my take.
Well, I'm gonna mark that one blue because that's sort of been my thinking too. There was a time when I thought Michigan might have been turning red, but when I read more about how the local Republican Party has been in Michigan, then maybe I think that you're right. I think it's probably going to be more of a Democratic state. So yeah, that's how I'm looking at that one. Let's see. Let's do this. Let's kind of start from the very. Oh yeah, Indiana. I'm sorry. I'm sitting here. I'm accidentally. I think I accidentally clicked Indiana earlier. So for some reason I thought we'd already done it. Indiana. Let's just go ahead and make that red.
Yeah. No reason to go into that one anymore. That one's
and talk about things way more interesting.
Yeah.
My apologies to anyone living in Indiana.
West Virginia. I guess we can go ahead and get rid of that one. That's clearly going to go red.
Yeah. They. I actually know of some people who visit West Virginia on a regular basis because they have family up there and they really enjoy like going for hikes and things like that. And they say it's Trump country through and through. They said you can't
recently. That's the impression.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, you can't go anywhere without seeing massive Trump signs and everything. I mean, it's Trump, Trump, Trump.
Not only that, but that stupid mask issue where there are some people who are anti-mask because they think that it takes away their liberty or whatever the fuck.
Right.
In West Virginia, everywhere we stopped, none of the customers at any place were wearing masks. So that place is one of the places where they're really embracing the fuck mask stance. So this is a tailor-made area for Donald Trump.
Right.
Even though he probably holds them all in deep contempt, but... they like him, so I guess that's all that matters.
I'm actually gonna go back to the top again and kind of work my way back down just to kind of like knock out some of these some of these real quick states up here like Maine. All right, I've heard some chatter that Maine could possibly be at play. But the more I looked into it, I didn't see a whole heck of a lot for the 2020 election here. I mean, I don't know. Do you feel like it's safe to just put Maine blue?
I think so.
Or to split their votes.
I know a lot of people are calling for a split vote, but I think it's just because pundits are huge nerds who like the split vote idea because it's nice and complicated. I don't think it's going to split the vote. All four are going to Biden. Okay.
Now, New Hampshire is actually one. I know it's only 4 electoral votes, but I think it's worth discussing at least something quickly about New Hampshire. Yeah. Is that I think New Hampshire is at play for Donald Trump. And the reason why is actually really nothing more than anecdotal. And that people I know who lived in New Hampshire or who go there or who talk about it are saying that it is a state that's going more and more conservative. And especially their cities are not particularly big in New Hampshire. We know New Hampshire doesn't have this massive population, right?
Right.
So their cities have kind of a rural feel to them. And that New Hampshire does feel like a rural state. And, so I from what I've gathered, from what I've heard, is that it's possible it might not be in play at this election, but that New Hampshire could be taking a red turn. Have you heard anything about this?
I have not. I mean, I know it's always sort of in play early in most election cycles, but then it usually trends blue as time progresses and rarely actually swings.
And apparently what's fueling it, one of the things that is help fueling it is that there's been some scandal among the local Democratic Party there.
Oh.
Of which apparently most people in New Hampshire feel like most of the Democrats that run their state are just corrupt. We could be seeing kind of like the beginning of sort of a right-wing turn in New Hampshire. I mean, it's always New Hampshire's has for most of our lives has fancied itself, kind of this minor right-wing bastion in the middle of the Northeast. But it could actually start to actually bear electoral fruit for the Republicans. I mean, I'm safe putting it blue this time, I think, if I had to make the call. But I don't think that anyone should be surprised if eventually New Hampshire starts to take more of a red turn.
I agree.
I think from what I've heard, the Democrats there are just that bad.
Yeah, and I guess, too, if they were going to take the plunge and go to the right, I don't think Trump is the kind of candidate who appeals in New England.
Correct. That's actually, I was thinking exactly that, too. We can just make Vermont blue.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one's as safe can be. Massachusetts, that's blue. Rhode Island, that's blue. Connecticut, blue. New York, it's always 65-35 Democrat. Don't see why that would change.
Yeah,
Jersey, probably like 60-40 Then we get to Pennsylvania, which is actually in play.
I think Pennsylvania is red.
Okay. So why do you think that?
Philadelphia got way worse than people thought it did. Yeah, Pennsylvania got way worse than people thought. Philadelphia got way worse than people thought it did. There were regions of Philadelphia that even consider itself to be conservative parts that even saw a little bit of the rioting come in from the city. So a lot of people in Philadelphia, especially in the suburbs, they describe it as they felt like they were being invaded. Pennsylvania, another state I used to live in. I lived in central PA, so I lived almost dead in the center of the state. And everybody I knew who was not enrolled at Penn State was a conservative.
Yeah,
it is a way more conservative state than people think.
Well, remember Chris Matthews, his dictum about Pennsylvania is that you have Pittsburgh and Philadelphia with Alabama in the middle.
Alabama in the middle, right? But I even think there's disaffected voters in Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh has fully embraced tech. And Pittsburgh has become a very, very much an unaffordable city. And a lot of people in Pittsburgh feel like their culture is disappearing because tech has completely taken over. And the people who got disaffected by tech people who moved into Pittsburgh and jacked up their rent, a lot of them actually voted for Donald Trump in 2016 when it began to happen. And I see no reason why they're not going to turn and vote for him again. So I see political unrest in Philadelphia. I see working class people in Pittsburgh who feel like the Democratic Party is attacking them by attacking their way of life, and also voter registration. So this is an interesting statistic for you. There has been more new registered voters voting Republican overwhelmingly than new registered Democrats in the state of Pennsylvania.
Really? Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that. I found out about that. Let's be great. Yeah, it's probably last week, I think it was, and I was like, I had already been leaning towards Pennsylvania is going to be a right-wing state, and when I heard that, I was like, there's just no doubt in my mind. If Donald Trump does lose it and say it does go blue, right, then that decides the election. We don't have to even talk anymore. But in my mind, if he does lose it, it'll be a factor that I haven't seen yet, or a factor that I didn't take into account. Or maybe Philadelphia actually does end up voting way more Democrat than it would. But remember, the Philadelphia suburbs have been growing. And as I said, I actually know quite a bit about Pennsylvania. The Philadelphia suburbs have been growing, and also the median housing price in the city of Philadelphia is considered some of the lowest in the country. Now, you talk to people in Philadelphia, and they're like, oh, our city's gentrifying, and it's unaffordable. But the median housing price is still under $200,000 in Philadelphia. There's a lot of cities in America cannot even say that. Not even close, So the Philadelphia suburbs have been growing, and a lot of those suburban voters are Trump voters. So I'm seeing now Harrisburg, the other, kind of bigger city in the middle, the capital of the state, that's going to go Democrat. There's no indication that city's not going to continue to go Democrat. But I wonder about voter turnout in Pittsburgh and how many people in the Philadelphia suburbs are going to come out for Donald Trump.
Yeah. I think you just made a pretty good case for Pennsylvania going red. I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, I think you're probably right on that one for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I know you said in the beginning that you felt like Pennsylvania was at play, which is actually interesting to me because most people I talk to won't even tell me it's at play. They think it's going Biden no matter what. And I'm like, I don't think that you're considering the political situation on the ground in Pennsylvania. Well, so I'm glad that you even said it's at play.
The reason I said it's at play is because it's never more than 52-48. I've never seen it go by more than that in any election of my lifetime. That's one thing. Another thing is that the southwestern part of the state, bordering West Virginia, is super conservative, and a lot of people there still identify as coal miners even after their mines have been closed for years. And so they tend to identify with whoever's more pro-coal. So that will always favor the Republicans. That's part of why I was thinking it's up for grabs.
I'm saying I keep running these factors through my head, and I keep saying to myself, how is anybody assuming it's a Democratic state? There's just so many factors that favor the Republican Party in Pennsylvania. And also, another thing I didn't mention before too, there's been talk that the Democratic Party, or a lot of prominent Democrats in Pennsylvania, have also been corrupt, similar to the situation in New Hampshire. We may be seeing a point now where the people of Pennsylvania say that we've given the Democrats enough chances, and still a lot of our state is what we call the Rust Belt.
Yeah.
But so many people in Pennsylvania are actually employed by educational systems. There's a lot of schools in Pennsylvania. So even some of the most conservative people that I met there and spoke to, and I mean people that are like to the right of Attila the Hun, were still very pro-education. I always found that fascinating about Pennsylvania voters. Needless to say, you don't see that in rural Louisiana and Alabama, unless it's for SEC football.
Yeah.
Yeah. Delaware, I guess we can go ahead and just call it blue, right?
Yeah, Delaware and Maryland both.
Joe Biden's home state. It's a blue state, Maryland, we can call Maryland blue, unless there's anything I'd be wrong about that.
I can't think of anything.
Okay, District of Columbia, I'm going to go ahead and put that blue.
Yeah, Virginia, that's pretty much a safe blue state at this point.
Right. I think that's very interesting to me, because I felt like over the last few elections that Virginia was always, seemed to me to feel like a genuine swing state. But so many people who work in DC have now been forced to move out to Virginia to find affordable housing and everything. And I mean, the number of Democratic registered voters there has grown like exponentially. I mean, yeah, Virginia, there really has been like a Democratic takeover of that state.
Yeah, and now we get to the most interesting and possibly decisive part of the map, in my opinion, the Southeast.
Yeah.
Before we get to Florida, though, sort of my prediction is I can't tell you which one because I don't know, but out of North Carolina and Georgia, I think that one of them will probably go for Biden. I just don't know which one. But both of them are in striking distance. But because states tend to revert to their natural form, even though Biden's leading in both states, I think he will lose one of them.
I personally think that Georgia goes red. I think Georgia is the one that stays red, and I think North Carolina is the one that's actually at play.
Okay.
Yeah. South Carolina, we just make that red.
Yeah, I mean, because even though the polls right now are showing competitiveness, I don't buy it for South Carolina.
Yeah. These two states right here, North Carolina and Florida, these are the two states I think the election is hinging on.
I agree.
If my predicted map right now is coming true, like if Wisconsin and Pennsylvania are red states and Minnesota holds on blue, then I think North Carolina and Florida are the ones that really need to be paid attention to. Now, of course, because I started this by saying I think Donald Trump is winning, and obviously I'm saying Florida's red.
Okay.
But so much on that. Now that does put him at 274 versus the Democrats 249. But if you make North Carolina blue, it puts the Democrats at 264 versus Republicans 274. Right. So when I fill out this map, and this was the part that this is actually the thing when I kind of had my aha moment, was Biden, as you said, Biden has a chance to win Georgia or North Carolina. I think both are a possibility. I think Georgia is a less of a possibility, and North Carolina, I might give him maybe a slight edge on it, right? Even if you give him that, if the Democrats cannot deliver Florida, they lose the election.
True. Although, I mean, I guess my prediction has Wisconsin going blue, so that would make some of a difference. But
right.
One thing I can say about North Carolina is I was just there a few weeks ago. My little sister got married, and because my family lives in some far-flung places across several counties, I got to see a lot of the countryside. I did not see a lot of Trump signs around comparatively when you look at what I saw when Bush was running and what I saw in 2016.
Yeah, and I think that what's factoring into North Carolina is one of two things. You either have a lot of Trump voters there who aren't comfortable having signs in their yard because because North Carolina is I think a legit swing state, or you just have a lot of people there who have legitimately turned against the president.
Well, see, the thing is, the part of the state that my family lives in, for the most part, except for my sister herself, lives in Charlotte, and my other sister lives in the Research Triangle. But the rest of my family lives in solidly Republican areas, small town, rural, whatever. And people there are not afraid to, put up their Republican shit. So there's no silence on behalf of politeness in that particular part of the state. And I'm still not seeing a lot of Trump stuff.
Yeah. See, that's why I think I'm hearing that as well. That's not the first time I've heard that. So that's why I'm inclined to give North Carolina to Biden. Even though some of my earlier predictions, I actually thought North Carolina might go red. But the more we've gotten closer to the election, the more I'm solidly in the camp that North Carolina stays blue. But
and there's also the Senate race. Tom Tillis, the Republican incumbent, really fucked himself over with the healthcare is like a dress shirt comment.
Yeah.
And they're having the run. They're doing this text campaign with anybody with a North Carolina number. I've been inundated with probably 3, 4, 5 messages about how Cal Cunningham, the Democrat, cheated on his wife.
Oh, geez.
And that's their campaign at this point. It's like, well, Tillis might be an asshole who wants you to die of cancer, but Cal Cunningham fucks other people.
I wish the parties would give up any pretext of the moral high ground. Please stop.
I know, it's ridiculous.
At this point, just debate policy, please, or just stop with the moral high ground stuff, because we're just going to what about each other to death.
And also, so the thing is, as someone who is not married to Cal Cunningham, and most likely never will be married to Cal Cunningham, I don't care what he does in his spare time.
Yeah, right. I can't say I've ever been too concerned about that kind of stuff myself. I know some people worry about, what does it say about a person's character and everything, but I don't know, things like that. It never seems to come to my mind. I mean, I guess maybe I'm like you and I've read too much about the Romans to be like, well, of course Caesar was an effective politician, but when it comes to that kind of stuff, I'm like, I don't think anybody should be looking up to Julius Caesar.
No, I mean, that being said, I think because of the influence of Christian Meyer's book on Caesar, a lot of people take that outsider thing way too seriously, and they also think that Caesar was somehow less moral than his contemporaries. I just think he was more successful. I don't think he was less moral. But that's a different conversation, I guess.
And I'm okay, and frankly, I'm okay with either interpretation.
Yeah, because I remember I was in a class where everybody was shrinking away from identifying with Caesar. I'm like, I don't see the difference really qualitatively. He just was better at the game. He had more charisma. He was a better backroom guy, a better speaker, and a better general. In an era where those were the skills you needed to succeed, he had all 3 in droves. That's why he won. It's really that simple. There's not like some special psychopathy at work with Caesar. He's not just some sociopath who turned his back on his contemporaries. No, he played the game the same way they did. He was just better at it.
There is no special sauce. He was just a man of incredible talent.
Yeah. Exactly. But with Florida, I know you think it's going red, and I told you before we got started that I have a reason for thinking it might not. So my reason is this. Recently, Ron DeSantis announced that basically they're doing away with social distancing in restaurants. And on the surface, that's popular because people want these local restaurants to boom and survive. But this will almost certainly cause a huge second wave of COVID. And because DeSantis and Trump are linked at the hip, at least politically, I think that could have some up-ballot effects which caused the vote to slightly tilt to Biden.
Yeah, I that's actually something I'm not certain about. I don't know how much COVID-19 numbers are going to really affect the election. I mean, since COVID has really hit, I feel like the political polarization and the politicization of it has only gotten worse over time. And I can't envision in my mind that the people in Florida would actually not vote Donald or stay home and not vote, even if they feel like there's a danger to a pandemic. I can't see it. I mean, I understand it's a point, and actually, I've heard that point made before that because Florida did this blanket reopen, that they could be, that this could be opening the floodgates or something, something like pandemonium there. But I still lean on my kind of original thesis here. If people don't want to get out and they don't want to vote, then I would consider it to be a disaffected voter, and I think that still favors the Donald.
Could be.
Also, another thing that leads me to believe that Florida is staying red. This is our first mention of one of my more favorite things in the world. There is a heavy amount of QAnon belief in Florida.
Really?
A lot.
That makes
turns
sense.
out, yeah, it makes sense, right? I mean, Florida is Florida, right? God love them, but I think that there are a lot of people in Florida who I would refer to as the cult of Trump. And I think that those people get out and vote no matter what. I don't think it's going to be a landslide in Florida, but I also wonder when we get back early about the Hispanic voters, right? I mean, if there's Hispanic voters in the south and in the south end of the state, around the Miami area, are very likely to go Biden. But I think there might be enough people down there to balance that out. But then a city like Jacksonville and a city like Tampa, I mean, these cities actually are more right wing and have more Republican voters than they have Democratic voters. I mean, I think those are very conservative places, especially Jacksonville. I can't if the coronavirus thing, if that were to take place, that would be a huge surprise to me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I have to follow my gut, I think you're right about Florida. Although, if there is a huge second wave that's linked with DeSantis' decision, then I think that could shift things. Also, Trump has lost ground with older voters compared to what Republicans normally get. Also, fun side note, there is a state that's older than Florida. You know which one it is?
Oh, I'm curious.
Maine. The last place I'd want to be if I was old, but, whatever.
I mean, I guess it's a different breed of person.
Yeah. People who are just immune to the cold.
I was wondering about this with the first debate, and of course that question was resoundingly answered right away. I was like, how much does Trump want to go after Biden? Like, does Trump want to be appearing to be, like, for lack of a better word, picking on an old man? Because, Trump is pretty vibrant. I mean, the guy's moving, his mind's moving pretty quickly, and it's probably from all the substances he probably takes, like, European Sudafed and stuff. But, I was wondering, like, how bad does he want to look to his older voters if he's going to sit up there and just be like, appearing to bash a senile old man? Of course, we got the answer to the debate right away. I mean, he had no trouble whatsoever throwing him completely off and constantly interrupting him because he knew it would make him look bad. I mean, I know that was a tactic. There's just no way.
I don't think that Trump's mind is in very good shape. I mean, I guess he probably has more left in the tank than Biden in that department, but I mean, that's not necessarily a good.
That's not. I mean,
impressive.
Right. By comparison, right? But I think Trump can be, when he goes off the cuff and he starts talking, I think he can be sharper and is more on point than maybe people might give him credit for. Yeah. I mean, even though a lot of what he says is not true and a lot of what he's saying is lying, he's just saying it off the cuff and he knows it's not true. And he talks on a what do they determine, a second grade level, third grade level, something like that, or even less.
Very low.
Yeah. So I still think that he comes off to people as though he is. I don't think there's anyone questioning whether or not he's questioning his mental handicap, whether or not he's mentally handicapped.
Yeah.
And by the way, back to North Carolina very briefly. I've seen some maps that are almost identical to my map, except North Carolina's red.
Oh.
And those are people predicting that the Republicans are just going to sweep in. Like, that's as close as I've seen to a landslide.
And that would only put
even
Trump
if
at 289, so that's not even...
Right, exactly. Yeah. I've seen that map before. That I mean it was identical to my map, except North Carolina was switched.
Also, on
Yes.
a related note, what do you think the
Mhm.
popular vote will end up?
Oh boy. Um, I think the voter turnout will be a bit higher than 2016, but not considerably higher. So I would expect more, a little bit more, just a little bit. Like I said, a little bit more. Just because I think a lot of the cities are going to come out and vote. Once again, the disaffected voters might still stay home, but I think a lot of the disaffected voters might be more, suburban, possibly rural people who aren't necessarily Trump supporters might not actually go out and vote.
Right.
Um, so but I see the cities turning out in droves. So I'd say maybe voter turnout slightly higher, but only slightly. I'm not talking about a surge of new voting. Um, so boy, I mean, I couldn't even begin to call the numbers.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I'm just talking about like the difference between the two of them, not necessarily the
oh,
totals or.
oh, okay. So you mean difference as in like how many votes he wins by?
Yes.
Oh, geez. Um, huh. I mean, I'm just going to throw a number out there. Let's say that Donald wins the popular vote by 1.5 million people.
You think Trump's winning the popular vote?
Yes.
Okay, that's an interesting call,
Yeah.
given the
Yeah,
national
I think
polls.
right, right, I know, but I once again, I've been for years now. I've been erring on the side of the polls are wrong, and I've been right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty
Um,
confident that you're wrong about this one. I think Biden will
uh,
win the popular vote by about the same that Hillary won it. So
oh,
about
I
2.5 to
mean,
3 million. But
what can I say? It's better to be provocative, right? I
yeah,
mean, because if I turn out to be wrong, I can say, I was just messing with you guys. I knew it. And if I turn out to be right, I'm a genius
yeah, I guess so. That's true. I mean,
and a
speaking of
very stable genius.
predictions that I didn't really believe too much, but I really wish I had put some money on. I predicted the Miami Heat would do really well in the playoffs. And I told some of my friends
Oh, that's
that, and they
awesome.
told me that I was wrong. Like, no, man, there's no way they have a chance. I mean, granted, they're not going to win the finals. They're on 3-1 already, and two of their best
No, no, they're,
players
they're
are
getting
hobbled. But I,
they're getting
I,
manhandled.
I did predict that they could come out of the East because I looked at their team and the defense they can play and everything else, and I said, yeah, they got a chance. I don't think they'll actually win, but they got a chance. And I was right. I wish I had said the same
Man,
about the Nuggets, but I did not have the foresight to look into the Nuggets because I find them boring. But
you should have put some money on the Miami Heat. I don't think anybody had them like getting into the finals.
yeah, I mean, I didn't know necessarily they would get to the finals. I just said that there's a shot. They have the makings of a dark horse because they play defense and they move the ball. The thing that really set them apart that I did not predict was the play of people like Tyler Hero and
Mm-hmm.
Duncan Robinson. I did not think they would get this good this fast.
I'll tell you though about the Lakers. I mean, being here in New Orleans and watching Anthony Davis for years. I mean, when the day he went to LA, it was like immediately we're just looking at our watches saying how soon till he hoists the trophy.
Yeah.
I mean, he is absolutely driven and wants to win a championship and is worth every penny he's paid. I
Also,
mean,
what was
and
it?
I mean, if you want to get out of the Pelicans because you want to win, dude, I can't hate on you.
Also, when Sean and I were in Kentucky, Anthony Davis played there.
Oh, that's true. He was.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. Was he there? You guys like? Was he there like the last year Sean was there? I
I don't
think.
know. It might have been because I was there longer
Mhm.
than Sean was. Yeah, it might have been that year. But I remember seeing the posters of him with the monobrow all around town. Uh,
Hey, Sean actually told me you're a Scottie Pippen fan.
yeah, I love Pippen. Pippen's one of my
All
favorites of all
right, all
time.
right. So I don't know if you might have heard this story before, but Scottie Pippen was playing against Karl Malone, right? And Karl Malone went up to the free throw line, and Scottie Pippen was telling a couple of the other teammates that he had a line for him, and they happened to be playing on a Sunday, right?
Yeah,
And Scottie Pippen just looks over at Karl Malone and goes, "The mailman don't deliver on Sunday, right?"
yeah, that was a pretty good line. And somebody has commented that Pippen, when Pippen talks, it sounds like if a tree could talk.
Oh yeah, because he talked like this.
Yeah, I mean, and actually, like, if anything ever happens to Morgan Freeman, I think Pippen should take over doing narrations I would love to listen to Pippen narrate. I mean,
I finally watched that Michael Jordan documentary, and man, everything interested me but Jordan.
yeah, Steve Kerr. I didn't know all that about his family. I
Oh,
wish they'd
you
focus
didn't
more
know?
on Kukoc and Longley because I find them fascinating.
Yeah, Kuko's an interesting dude, but I didn't know Steve Kerr's dad was assassinated in Beirut.
Yeah, because I'd heard that Steve Kerr came from a political family, but I didn't know exactly any of the details.
Yeah, yeah, he taught I think what was it Islamic Middle Eastern history at American University in Beirut, and
Yeah.
then he got like assassinated walking to his car. I was like, that's really
Also,
crazy. I didn't know.
I remember, as a kid and as a teenager who liked basketball, in my imagination, I wanted to be more like a Michael Jordan type player. But I guess
Right.
realistically, a voice in my head said the best you could ever do is Steve Kerr. So I've always felt a weird connection with Steve Kerr because like the one element of basketball I'm good at is shooting from long range. So like there was always a
Right,
part of me
right.
that realized that's the best I could ever aspire to be.
Right, right. Really work on your shot and be distracting on defense.
Yes.
You're like, that's my best path to the NBA.
I mean that would be my only path.
Yeah.
But anyway, so my Pippin, one thing I'd love to see happen, even though this would probably suck for Scotty himself, if he ever goes through a midlife crisis, and right now he's at the right age, and also he's divorced, so it could happen. I hope that he adopts the moniker Scotty Pimp Hand, and like
Scotty Pippen.
and he starts dating way younger women and wearing ridiculous outfits, driving convertibles. I would love to see that happen. I don't know why, but to me that would be amazing.
You're just hoping he becomes the 80s anti-hero we all want him to be.
Yeah, no, I do, and I
Yeah.
hope he keeps going on all the shows on ESPN, like the Jump that he always goes on, and then he's like, "Yeah, my new Twitter handle is Scotty Pimp Hand, and I'm available to all the ladies."
Amazing. Scotty, if you're listening, please don't do any of that.
Scotty, if you're listening, please do. It would be epic, and remember, I've been your fan since the mid '90s, so I would definitely support your new endeavor.
Yeah. All right. Well, man, I appreciate you having me on. I guess I'm gonna have to wrap it up because if anybody's paying attention to the tropics, looks like we have a hurricane bearing down on New Orleans. Maybe, probably moves again. But today's probably going to be. We're doing this on the Wednesday. What is it? What's the date today?
Wednesday, October 7th.
Yeah, so Wednesday, October 7th. This is probably the last day that the grocery stores and gas stations won't be an absolute madhouse. So I probably need to go get my hurricane snacks and charge all my battery operated fans.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. So yeah, man, I appreciate it, and I honestly cannot wait until election night. I'm waiting for the chaos, and I'm waiting to see whose map came the closest.
Yeah. Also,
and once again, I'm willing to accept if I'm wrong. That's fine. It's just, but I really feel like this is. I really feel like this is Trump's race to lose.
So another thing that I kind of hope happens in a way, if we have this map, but then Iowa flips, that would decide the whole election. And I kind of hope that happens in a way because then it would finally justify Iowa as being a place we pay attention to. I'm resentful of the fact that I can name as many cities in Iowa as in states I've actually lived in. That I know that there's Waterloo and Ames and all these other little shitholes all around the city, all around the state. I mean, I'm sick of hearing about Iowa. I want it to actually count for something for a change. So, yeah.
Yeah. And on a very similar note, if Maine splits their votes, and because Maine actually brought in ranked choice voting,
Yes.
if Maine splits their votes and it turns out that ranked choice voting actually does have an effect, I think that's something we actually need to watch closely.
Yes.
Because places with ranked choice voting say that it really hasn't had much difference on a local level, but to see it on a national level, I am very curious. So yes, if you watch Iowa, I'll watch Maine, and we'll watch two states that barely make a difference.
Yes. The other state I'm really curious about, other than North Carolina, is Georgia. And what's another one? If Arizona flipped, which I think is way more likely than Texas, then that would be very intriguing given the general trend of Hispanic voters. So that would be the kind of like what the fuck moment.
Last question here before I go. This is actually something I'm curious about. Is North Carolina usually? I know you lived there, so I know that you may or may not know this. Is North Carolina one that's usually called early, or is it usually one that gets called later in the election?
It usually takes a couple hours, but it's not one that you have to wait up until 6 in the morning to
Okay.
learn about. Although in
See,
this case, it might be a little different, but typically speaking, North
yeah.
Carolina is relatively expeditious at counting votes.
Okay, good. Because I'm going to be sitting up that night wherever I end up watching it, however, whatever way I end up doing this thing, and I'm going to be sitting there. I'm just going to be waiting for North Carolina,
Yeah, what we should
waiting for
do,
North Carolina, and waiting for Wisconsin.
I'm going
I'm
to
going
go
to
ahead
be
and put you
waiting.
on the spot, but what we should do is do a live election night stream.
Oh, geez. I mean, look, I'm not completely against that idea.
Yeah, so I mean, just think about that one, and maybe we can make
I'll
that
have
happen.
to, man. I'll have to set up a war room in my house. Like, I'm gonna put a tri-corner hat on. I mean, it'll like I'll have I'll set up my musket. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now,
So
I do
yeah,
also have to
that's
say, I want to get your take on it real fast. I know both Sean and I think that this is a long way from being the most important election of our lifetimes. Where do you stand on that?
yeah. I actually have to agree with the both of you on that. This is not the most important election of our lifetime. If Donald Trump gets reelected, because all we've been talking about here is if he gets reelected, right? But if he actually does serve 4 more years, I actually see this as the very distinct possibility we could be looking at a president who goes lame duck in two of them. I mean, I think that especially if things don't necessarily always go his way, that he checks out. And so I don't think that we're voting in the most important election of our lifetimes. Like we're voting. I mean, second term presidencies are notoriously not getting much done anyway. I think Donald Trump's might be even less. They might be even getting even less done.
That's a really good
So
point.
yeah, I'm going to have to agree with both of you on that. Maybe for a different reason, but no, I don't think we're voting in the most important election of our lifetime. Now, however, 2024, that could be the most important election of our lifetime. I know that's a long way away. We don't even know who the candidates are going to be, but that has the potential to be incredibly important.
Yeah, and I'm not going to call your prediction wrong directly, but what I will say is that when 2024 rolls around, there will be an incumbent Democratic president named Kamala Harris.
Boy, man, if that's how it goes down, wow. I mean, I won't be surprised if suddenly the Democratic Party says, this Kamala Harris was the person we actually wanted, and we got Biden instead. We'll put him to hospice in 2 years,
See,
and
I
just
think,
let Kamala go in 2 years in, and then try to get her reelected twice.
yeah,
I
that's
mean,
what I'm
because
thinking.
when the poors didn't vote for her, the poors didn't vote properly.
Yeah, no, they're going to try to do the decade of Kamala strategy. I've been saying that for a while.
I mean, y'all, if that happens, man, I think I got to say that'd be some weird, wild stuff.
Yeah, also, if Kamala is an incumbent president in 2024, then just calling it on the generic ballot, I think that will be a good year for Republicans.
Mm, very interesting. All right, man.
Anyway,
Well, I'm
well,
gonna
thank
head
you for
out.
coming back and doing the follow up. Definitely appreciate
Oh
it.
yeah, I appreciate it. I'm glad we finally got it set up, and yeah, I'm looking forward to November the 3rd. And yeah, if you do want to set up kind of a live stream for that, I mean, as long as I don't have other plans that night to sit up and watch it and stuff my face full of Raising Canes, maybe we'll figure it out.
All right, sounds good. I'll make sure that
Oh well,
Sean puts a full court press on you then.
yeah, right. Well, I mean, maybe some Raising Canes and Muffaladas. I tend to nervous eat.
Okay.
And also, before I go, as always, if anybody listening hasn't subscribed to the Forgotten Battles YouTube channel, we have a great new video we just posted on the Battle of Ortona, World War II. And we've got some other really good stuff coming up too. So if you guys haven't subscribed to that yet, really would appreciate the support for that. And I think you guys will really enjoy a lot of our history documentaries.
Yeah, there's some good stuff, and I think you guys have been experimenting with more animation recently, right?
Right. We're working on one right now on Granicus, Alexander's battle. And we're starting to work in some animated maps and troop movements and everything. We started experimenting with some new software to do that. And I've already seen some of the test stuff from our producer Lance, and looks amazing, looks incredible. I'm very, very excited about it, and also I know a lot of people tend to say this, but we have a very long list of topics we want to cover and things that we want to write in the future, and we definitely have not written our best stuff yet.
True, and that's mostly because I haven't written anything lately.
Oh, shot across the bow.
Yep, shot across the bow, the stern, and right up the
middle. All right, man. Well, take care, and I'll see you on the other side of the hurricane.
All right, man. Good luck with all that. Hopefully it misses you, and I will see you around.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.